Okay, so this time we're doing a review on the Flagellant. Um, let's take a look at his stats. Right. So we've got the Flagellant down here compared to the average. Um, and that's the Flagellant and how he stacks in HP. We filtered it by HP. So if we look at the Flagellant stats, he's got rel relatively below average HP, below average dodge, lowest in the game, tied with four other people. One of the higher speeds in the game, tied for second place with four other people. He's got below average crit, which is fine. He's got below average damage, pretty notably below average actually. He's the second lowest after the Antiquarian. Um, so you can tell right away he's not a very good damage dealer in terms of just hitting them in the face. He is a bleeder though, so that's where he generates most of his damage, but we'll talk about that later. He's got very good stun resist. That's very good for a healer like him. He's got okay blight resist. This is below average, which is a little concerning, but not that big of a deal. He's got very high disease resist for some reason. For a bleeding person with open wounds all the time, having high disease resist is kind of strange to me. He's got very good move resist, which is pretty good. I like my frontline characters that don't work in the backline to have high move resist. He's got the highest bleed resist in the game, which is amazing. That's very, very good, especially with all of the synergies with his set and bleed resist. There's only one synergy. Never mind. There's only one synergy, but we'll talk about it later. He's got below average debuff resist, whatever. He's got the worst trap disarm in the game. Fine, whatever. We're not going to disarm traps with him. That's okay. We have other characters for that. He's got a forward 3 and a back 1. That's all he really needs. Being a forward 3 and a back 1 is perfect. He can get back. He can basically move from any position into a position where he functions. And that's very good. Overall, we see that he's actually one of the frailest characters in the game. He's equally as frail as a Plague Doctor. And he's not a very good damage dealer with a low crit and low damage mods. He's got good speed though. Right. So let's before we move over to his skills, let's talk about his unique class differences compared to the other classes. He's got a bunch of them, as you can see on the page right here. This is the wiki. Right. So the Flagellant cannot become virtuous. He always becomes afflicted with a class-specific affliction called Rapturous. And you can see right here, it gives him 25% damage, 3 speed, and negative 20 dodge is what it does. So it takes his dodge and brings it straight to 0 because he starts off with 20 at max level. And while Rapturous, the Flagellant will take random actions like hitting himself or hitting other people, and that's obviously not that great. You don't want your characters to do whatever. Like you definitely, one of the worst things in the game is being afflicted and having your character take an action you didn't want them to take. Obviously hurting themselves or hurting their party members is also very not good. So I tend to stay away from Rapturous. It's definitely the least bad affliction to have because it does give you like pretty good bonuses, but definitely stay away from it still. Is my recommendation for that. When the Flagellant falls below 40%, he actually increases. He gets a buff for damage and crit. These are very strong numbers, very big numbers. But you have to remember with damage mods on him that his base damage is one of the lowest in the game already, and so these don't actually impact his damage output that much. These together, so that means when you're both Rapturous and below 40 HP, you've got a plus 45 damage, which brings your 5 to 11 base damage up to like what? At most 8 to 12, which is not even average. I mean, not 8 to 15, which is average. So when you are under these extreme conditions, your damage output is just average. So that's don't do this. Don't do this yourself. Just take his bleeds as damage and be happy with that. When the Flagellant reaches Death's Door, every other party member is healed for 10% of their max HP. Right. So when he hits Death's Door, everyone gets AoE healed, and he gets buffs for 5 accuracy, 20 damage, 2 speed, and a bunch of resist buffs. The resist buffs I like a lot because when you're on Death's Door, you don't want to be dotted with bleeds and blights. That's very bad. 2 speed is pretty okay on Death's Door. I like going first and being able to heal myself with Redeem on Death's Door. 20 damage doesn't matter. 5 accuracy doesn't matter. His moves have pretty good accuracy anyway. Right. He'll also, for reaching death's door, all other characters in the game take permanent debuffs for the rest of the dungeon, but he does not. So that's also another good thing. But he will take heart attack debuffs for reaching 200 stress. And these are permanent, obviously, for the rest of the dungeon. And then when the Flagellant gets death blown, he'll AoE stun the enemies and heal all of your party members for 10 HP. So it's kind of like a last hurrah type of idea. This basically reads like nothing to me. I don't want my Flagellants dying. I don't want any people dying. Period. But it's like a nice little thing if you ever reach a scenario where that happens. Right. And the Flagellant can only use the Penance Hall for stress relief, and he can only flagellate in the Penance Hall. You can only flagellate. Period. It'll always heal 100 stress, unless you have the Crimson Court event going on, in which case you heal 90. But yeah, it'll always heal him straight down to 0 stress, except for this scenario. So that's very good. It is the most expensive though, so that's a little concerning. Oh, and you can't use 2 Flagellants in the same party. This is just a balancing act. This is just a balancing point of view. 2 Flagellants in the party can break a lot of things, and we'll see that when we go over his skill. Right. So let's take a look at his skills. So right away you'll notice that I haven't actually selected 4 skills. Usually I would show you what I think is most optimal for him in terms of running 4 skills, what I would run. And the reason for that is I think that 6 of his skills are actually very, very viable to run, and you should be running all 6 of these skills for certain scenarios. The 2 that I've selected, which is Reign of Sorrows and Reclaim, I think are staples on his set. No matter what 2 other skills you pick, I think these 2 should always be on your set. And we'll go through each skill to talk about them and see why I think that, kind of. Let me just click 2 skills right now, and just so I can make it dark, and we can. I just like it, the aesthetic look. Let me click the set I use the most, which is this. This is the set I use the most. When you queue into a dungeon, this is what I would use. But as you get beat up in the dungeon, you're going to want to use these other moves. These 2. Suffer, don't use. We'll go over why. Okay, so Punish. Punish is a move that can be launched from 1 and 2 and hits the opponent's 1 and 2 positions. It has the highest accuracy in the game, which is 115. A lot of moves have 115, but it definitely... It will always connect, basically, because you're hitting the front 2 characters of the enemy's team, and they tend to have low dodge. So this will always connect, and it bleeds for 140% for 6x3. 6x3 is a very heavy bleed. It's very, very good, especially on characters in the front line who tend to be protection-heavy characters. Being able to deal a 6x3 dot on them is very powerful. It also has no no damage modifier, so it hits for 100% of Flagellant's damage, which is 5 to 11. So best case scenario, it does 11 damage, which is his max, plus 6. That's 17. 17 damage is very good. Worst case scenario, it hits for 5, and we bleed for 6, does 11. So the Flagellant's actual damage range with Punish is actually 11 to 17, which is above average. Turns him into an actual good damage dealer if you can land this bleed consistently. Obviously, it has a chance to be resisted, and when it gets resisted, you'll be sad. But it can get up to 11 to 17. That's above average. That's above the average of 8 to 15. Reign of Sorrows is pretty good as well. The reason why I have it on the set all the time is because it targets the back 2 rows, which are the high priority targets. It can also be only launched from your position 1 and 2. It's got the best accuracy in the game, 115 again. Oh yeah, the crit modifiers we don't really care about too much. This is a class that kind of depends more on bleeds to deal damage than actually hitting them hard. Of note though is that if you do crit with a dot based class or with a dot move, the dot lasts for 1.5 times longer. In terms of a move that lasts for 3 rounds, it'll be 3 times 1.5 is equal to 4.5, but then it'll round up to 5. So if you crit with Punish, it'll deal 6 by 5, which is a lot of damage. That's 30 damage. You crit, you've essentially dealt 30 damage to the opponent. It's going to be over 5 turns, which is very slow, but against bosses who take multiple actions, it'll be very good because they run through those dots very fast. Oh yeah, there's also a minus bleed resist portion to these moves, which is really not necessary, I guess. But hey, it's nice to have. Right, back to Rain of Sorrows though. Right, so it hits the 2 back ranks and bleeds them each for 5/3. Very good. Minus 67 damage mod though, so that means minus 2/3 of the damage. Let's just do quick math here. That'll mean you deal like what, between 3 and you deal between 2 and 4. You deal between 2 and 4 damage, and then you get 5 damage on top of that. So you end up doing 7 to 9 damage is what you end up dealing with this, but you deal it to 2 people. So you end up dealing a lot of damage with this. And it also, I mean, hey, it hits the priority targets. I love hitting the priority targets. Good move. I'm gonna skip these 2 moves, and we're gonna go back to them. We're gonna talk about why I run these 4 mainly, and we can end on this, which is a good segue. Reclaim at level 5 heals for 4/3. So Reclaim works differently from other heals in that it applies a buff to your characters, which heals them for 4 HP each round. At lower levels, Reclaim isn't that powerful. It heals for 2/2, I believe. So it's not very recommended at lower levels, but at higher levels, since it heals for 4/3, that's 12 heal. You've essentially healed someone for 12 HP using this move. And that's as large as a Vestal heal. It does, however, have a chance to bleed you though for 5/3. And this is what I was talking about earlier when I was talking about the Flagellant's highest bleed resist of 125% in the game. You can resist this bleed that he applies to himself. Let me just check real quick. It is at level 5, it is a 160% chance to bleed you. So 160% minus 125 resist essentially means there's a 35% chance to bleed yourself with this move. You can cancel that out with trinkets. You can cancel that out with quirks, whatever you want. If you don't want to be bled at all, you can do that. I don't personally mind the bleeding though, because it can help you get closer and closer to other stronger moves like Redeem and Exsanguinate. But this move is has extreme synergy with not only the bleed resist component of Flagellant, but also his high speed. He has a very high speed, and so you can, at the end of the fight, you can use his last action right before you end the fight. Instead of killing the opponent, you can tack on a Reclaim to one of your lower HP characters, and they will heal themselves as you walk through the hallways. So this move is healing that counteracts like dots. So if you get dotted in the last turn of a fight, you can tack on a Reclaim and walk through the hallway, and as you take dot damage, you will heal it with Reclaim healing. Very, very powerful. It also has a very powerful interaction with Death's Door and dots. The Reclaim heal will happen first, taking you off of Death's Door, and then the dot damage will happen, either putting you right back onto Death's Door or not putting you on Death's Door at all, which is either one is fine as long as I don't have to roll for a death blow on Death's Door with a dot. Very powerful skill. Very, very runnable. Probably not that good in the early game, but in the late game or in the mid game, it scales insanely. Okay, right. So as you bleed lower and lower in terms of HP, you're going to enter a state where you are below 40% HP. And not only will that boost the Flagellant's offensive stats and his speed and everything, like we mentioned earlier, but it will give him access to 2 very powerful skills, which I'll highlight right now, known as Exsanguinate and Redeem. Alright, so Redeem is a very, very powerful skill. It's insane in the amount of damage, in the amount of HP that it heals. It heals not only yourself for 43% HP of your max HP, but it also heals someone else on your team for 50% of their maximum HP. So when you're, okay, let's just say you're at like 40%. That means you bring your Flagellant back from 40% HP to 83% HP with this move, and not only that, you bring someone else 50% of their HP back to the full. Right? So that is an insane amount of heal. That is definitely contesting some of the biggest heals in the game, put up by the occultist in terms of numbers. And it heals 2 people, so you can get 2 people off Death's Door. You can full top off 2 people. You can do whatever you want. And because of the strength of this move, it has debuffs to the Flagellant himself. of minus 25% healing skills outgoing and incoming, and minus 3 speed. The good thing about this skill, though, is that Reclaim is not a healing skill. It is a buff skill. You've applied a buff to your allies. You haven't healed them. The buff is going to heal them, but it's not an actual heal. So Reclaim works around Redeem very well. And similarly with Exsanguinate, you get access to this at lower than 40% HP. You get massive damage modifiers for doing that, for being below 40% HP, and then this hits someone for 9/3 of a bleed. 9/3. This is an insane amount of damage that comes out of this skill. 9/3 is 27 damage. Using this skill, you've dealt 27 damage to someone. A boss can take 27 damage from this one skill alone. And not only that, you heal yourself for 50% of your own HP. And of course, you take the other healing debuffs, but that's fine. We've healed ourselves 50% HP. We don't need healing for a while. Right. So obviously the nature of these moves, these two moves here, is that they kind of are blank moves on your bar until you need them. And so I find myself typically kind of having one of them not on my bar, and then clicking to have sometimes if my characters are stressed, I'll have Endure on my bar, which is a kind of stress exchange type of move. So the Flagellant himself, the Flagellant will heal someone for 14 stress, and he himself will take a 6 stress penalty to himself. He will be stressed for 6 stress. And then he'll give himself a speed buff of 3. Very good. I like my healers going fast. I like my healers going first. Speed buff is good. Not only that, you can then use this speed buff that you get to tack on a quick reclaim on your next turn before you end the fight, maybe. Or you can get off a super fast redeem or super fast punish to end the fight if you want. Just a lot of synergy with his set, and Endure is definitely a part of that. We'll talk about Suffer later. It's a really bad move, but I just really want to get into how to use him, because obviously most of the other characters in the game will train you to think that you should run only 4 moves and never consider any other moves because these 4 moves are the best, yada yada. But the Flagellant doesn't play like that. He plays like a toolkit, and you pick the tools you need to use, right? So obviously when you get into a dungeon, no one's really stressed, so you don't really run Endure, and you're not really below 40% HP. So you really don't need to run either of these, but since you have to kind of pick one because Suffer is trash, I pick the one that can heal 2 of my party members, both a Flagellant and someone else, to have on my bar. This is the standard bar. You want to deal damage, these are here. You want to make sure that you don't die, these are here. Very good. But if you find yourself in a position where at the end of a fight somehow the Flagellant is below 40% HP, and only him is below 40% HP, then you can click off Redeem, you can click on Exsanguinate. Suddenly you have a crazy damage dealer who applies a 9/3 dot. That's amazing. I can deal damage, I can heal myself. That's great. If you find yourself in a position where your party is really beat up, in terms of stress, if your party is really beat up in terms of stress, but it's kind of okay on HP, or maybe your secondary healer is taking care of it, we can click off Redeem entirely and put on Endure. And now we can help alleviate the stress issues of the party. And we don't have to worry about HP. We can still recover HP with Reclaim, which is why it's on the set all times. But we might not need the power of Redeem necessarily. If you find yourself in a position where you're really beat up in terms of both HP and stress, I actually recommend clicking off Punish and putting on Endure. Punish is a move that only targets the front 2 ranks, and those are the ones that you can stall off of most easily. So there's no reason to damage them with Punish. So we can put on this set and kind of run it like this instead. And that's a very good set. This is a set I use very often. This is a set I use very often when I'm in a dungeon when I'm beat up. And I really recommend Switch. I honestly, if you really don't want to buy, if you don't have enough gold to buy all 6 of these moves and level them up, I would recommend switching between this set right here and this set. Wait, this set right here. Exsanguinate is not as powerful in terms of, you want to stay alive more than you want to deal damage. When it is active, when both it and redeem are active, you are more likely in a scenario where you want to stay alive than just dealing damage. So you can get away with not buying Exsanguinate and just buy these 5 moves. So that's Punish, Rain of Sorrows, Reclaim, Redeem, Endure. Right. So now that we've kind of finished talking about the toolkit aspect of Flagellant, let's talk about his last skill, the odd one out, the only one that I believe is not runnable, and why is it not runnable? Okay, so what Suffer does is it clears one of your members who is marked from that mark, and it transfers all the dots that member has onto the Flagellant. So what does that essentially do? It essentially means that your Flagellant is taking all of the dot damage, right, of that member. Why do we want to do that when we can just kind of negate that dot damage with Reclaim and kind of maybe even heal them if the dot is applying for less than 4x3? If it's a 3x3 dot, we heal them 1 HP every time that dot goes through. So there's no reason to use Suffer for the transfer bleed, transfer blight. We don't want to clear a mark, because in clearing the mark, we actually mark ourselves. You can see it says mark target self. So in order to clear that mark, we're kind of marking ourselves. And you never want to mark the Flagellant. You want him to get damaged a little bit maybe, and then you want to have access to redeem. You don't want to go down to 0% HP just to have access to redeem. You just want to get down to 40%. Marking yourself makes enemies deal supremely large amounts of damage to you. Certain enemies have huge bonuses to marked characters. And in those scenarios, you don't want to move the mark around. You want to finish off the opponent. Right? So the mark target version of Suffer, the mark target aspect of Suffer is not good. The minus 40% stress part of Suffer is actually pretty strong, except we don't really, we don't have time to be casting a skill that only does minus 40% stress. So we don't have enough action economy. We would rather just heal someone with Reclaim, kill off the enemy so they don't stress us with crits, but just anything else except trying to save my own stress. You might think that using Suffer and then Endure is a very good strategy, because you can reduce the incoming stress that's coming from Endure. But there is a reason why we don't care about Endure, and that's Lash of Solace, and we'll talk about it later. The last part of this is plus 10% Deathblow resist. Don't play a Deathblow Flagellant. You will get Deathblown. He has oh, that's right. That's one of the other special things about him. He has a naturally higher Deathblow resist than the other characters in the game. The other characters in the game have a 67% chance to resist death. He has a 73% chance. But still, do not play a Deathblow resistant Flagellant. I warn you, do not. I really, really, really recommend you to not play that version of Flagellant, because those percentage points, the Deathblow resist caps at 87%. And if you play one that is centered around getting to death door, you will get death blown, you will lose your Flagellant in that scenario, and you will cry a lot. Do not cry. Do not put yourself in a position where you're going to cry. Okay. So this skill sucks is what we've essentially is the conclusion we've reached. Okay. Let's look at camp skills. Lash's Anger. Absolutely one of the worst camp skills in the game. Do not spend camp skills to give yourself plus 40 stress. Why would you ever do that? You are already giving yourself stress with Endure. Do not put yourself in Rapturous. If you put yourself in Rapturous, you will hit your party members. You will lose your turn because the Flagellant decides it's a fun turn to just do his own action. You will, if Flagellant is at Death's Door, you will sometimes hit yourself and Deathblow yourself as the Flagellant. Do not kill your Flagellant. You will put yourself in a position where you will cry. Do not put yourself in a position where you're going to cry. This is a horrible skill. Do not spend points on this. This is amazing skill. This is insane. Lash of Solace 3 cost to subtract 50 stress off of the Flagellant? That's crazy. We are already putting stress on ourselves. We're healing 14 stress off of our allies in order to put 6 stress on ourselves. So we would like a way to alleviate the fact that we are putting stress on ourselves over and over again. Lash of Solace does 50 stress. You can use Endure almost, like, what is it? Division, math. 8 times you can use this skill like, you can use Endure 8 times, and Lash of Solace will cancel out all 8 of those uses. 8 times 14, what is that? Math. 32. 112. You can heal 112 stress off of somebody. And Lash of Solace will cancel all of the stress you put on the Flagellant. This is assuming we're not running any minus stress trinkets on the Flagellant, which I do recommend. We'll talk about trinkets later. This is an amazing skill. You should almost always be clicking this when you have the Flagellant with Endure. Which is almost always, because I really like Endure. Oh, by the way, Endure gets a lot better in the late game, mid-game and late game. In the beginning, it is a horrible ratio of you take 10 stress to heal 10 stress. Not very recommended. Lash's Kiss heals for a third of the Flagellant's HP, removes blights and bleeds. +3 speed for 4 battles. This is not that good. You don't want to heal the Flagellant for this much HP. If you're in a position where you want to heal him for 33% of his HP, chances are he's below 40% or getting close to below 40%, and you can heal him up with either Exsanguinate or Redeem anyway. You shouldn't be using this skill often. It's there, it's nice. I just don't think it's not one of the skills you will be using a lot at camps. Lash's Cure is pretty good. It's a way to save money. Removes disease on the Flagellant. He has a above average disease resist though. So it's not that notable, but it's here. It's here for you to use. Oh my god. There's even more unique things about the Flagellant. He doesn't have the three generalist camp skills called Encourage, Wound Care, and Pep Talk. He's so unique. They really tried to make him really unique. Right. So that wraps up the camp skills section of this. So what's next? Let's talk about his crit buff. When he crits, when characters crit in the game, they each have a character specific buff for themselves. The Flagellants is plus 20% bleed skill chance. I don't think too much of that. It's okay. It'll bring him up to very high bleed like margins, but he has to crit before that, so he has to first crit a move, and then he can reap the rewards of that crit buff. Not that big of a deal. Not that game changing. Alright, so let's talk about his trinkets. Right, so let's talk about his rare and very rare trinkets. So his rare trinket is, part of it is only active if you are below 40% HP. And the other part of it is just plus 10% max HP. This trinket is very bad. I think it's one of the worst trinkets in the game. With the Flagellant specifically, when you're below 40% HP, you're going to click Redeem or you're going to click Exsanguinate. You're not going to be here for long. You're going to get out of that as fast as possible. So 40%. These buffs, although they are very good, will not be active often. And if they are active, you're in a very bad situation. You definitely don't want to put yourself in a very bad position just to get these buffs. This is a bad trinket. Plus 10% max HP isn't that good either. Bringing your Flagellant further away from being easily able to get below 40% HP is not too great. Even if it makes him bulkier, wouldn't recommend it. So the rare is really bad. The very rare is 10% death blow resist, which is a bad stat to be increasing. It's not that important. It's nice to have. I appreciate it. But no thank you. And the other portion is only if you're at Death's Door, get plus 20 dodge. So if you're at Death's Door, you get up to 40 dodge, which is only just slightly higher than the Jester. The Jester still gets hit a lot of the time, so he still gets hit a lot of the time. So if you're at Death's Door, you still get hit. I'm not excited about that. Plus 20% damage if stress above 85. If your stress is above 85, that means you're at least 86, which means you're very, very close to becoming Rapturous. Do not become Rapturous. This trinket only works when you're in very bad situations. You don't want to be in very bad situations. You are actively trying to improve your situation. You never want to be in this situation. So if you put this trinket on your Flagellant, it anti-synergizes with what you want to do, because you want to put yourself in a good position, but it wants you to be in a bad position. So this is essentially just a very bad trinket. This is a blank trinket most of the time. I don't want it. So now that we've kind of said that the Flagellant trinkets suck, because obviously these are basically unrunnable, what do we usually put on our Flagellant? What do I usually put on my Flagellant? Let's not say our. I don't know about you guys, but I usually put, since he has such a high bleed resist anyway, his only weakness kind of is blight resist, right? He has an average blight resist, as you can see here, average blight resist, and we want to patch that up. So I will find a way to sneak on maybe a fortifying garlic on him, which is plus 30%, plus 33% blight and bleed resist. When we bring up the bleed resist to 158 with the fortifying garlic, it only has a 2% chance to bleed him with when you use reclaim, which has a 160% chance to bleed. And blight resist is his only weakness, so if we buff that, he becomes pretty tanky. You can more easily control when he enters 40% HP. And the other trinket I recommend for him is a minus stress trinket. So that would be like Book of Sanity or the Aria box. That's mainly to help him with his Endure exchange rates. So if you put on a Book of Sanity, he'll take less stress from Endure, which means he can use it more times before Lash of Solace is needed. Very good trinket. You can also, if you also remember, Flagellant has Flagellant's HP basically yo-yos back and forth from very low to very high. So his HP is not really that big of a deal. He's actually very, very durable despite having some of the frailest stats in the game. You will never really find your Flagellants dying. If you give them a fortifying garlic, that is. So his only other weakness, his HP is fine, his dots are fine. His stress is the only weakness he has. If he becomes Rapturous, it's really bad, and if he becomes 200 stress, he takes a heart attack, and that's where he starts really not feeling that great. So you want to make sure he doesn't get stressed. So another reason for Book of Sanity, another reason for Aria box. Just those are my two recommendations. Run a blight resist trinket of some sort. The best one is fortifying garlic, because it also covers his bleed, and run a minus stress trinket. And the last thing we have to talk about is his positioning and characters. So Flagellant is a position 1 or position 2 character. Almost all of his moves work from those positions. Yep. Almost all his moves work from those positions. Right. And so what do we want with the Flagellant? He has no stuns, so we're going to want a stunner. And we're going to want a stunner who synergizes with him. So what does he do to himself, right? He bleeds himself sometimes by accident with Reclaim. So we would like a stunner that can clear dots. That'd be very nice to have. And that is very easily found in PD, Plague Doctor. Plague Doctor also has the added bonus of Plague Grenade, which hits the same ranks with a dot that Reign of Sorrows hits. So there's an inherent synergy between these two, in that they can both deal with the same ranks. And not only that, Plague Doctor, they are about the same speed. Why is she not? Oh, because her armor isn't. All right, let me upgrade her armor so you guys can see. Wait, what? What the? Oh, I took him off the roster. We'll put him back on a bit. Where's the Plague Doctor? Right, so... Right, so you can see the Plague Doctor is speed 9, and the Flagellant is speed 9 as well. So they're of the same speed, so you can have this scenario where Flagellant opens with Reign of Sorrows, and Plague Doctor will open with Blinding Gas. And that'll stun the backline, and you start to whittle them down already with Reign of Sorrows. And then next turn, we can double up on the backline with Reign of Sorrows again, and Plague Grenade. So you're doing a lot of dot damage, and it's very good. So when we look at this, Flagellant's a good healer, but he's not, like, his best healing skill is locked behind the fact that he has to be below 40% HP. So what do we want to do? We want to make sure that when he does get that off, it is a very big heal for whoever needs it, and we need probably a secondary off healer. and that would be Arbalest with Battlefield Bandage. Arbalest with Battlefield Bandage and Flagellant is a very good combination, mainly because of what I just said, but also because Battlefield Bandage's buffs last after the battle. So if you apply the buff, the healing buff, to one of your characters, and then apply the reclaim healing over time buff to that same character, it will actually heal for more than 4 per movement in the hallways. So these two together actually combine to be a really powerful healing engine. And so this is a good recommendation. And then at this point, we would like to fill in our position 2 with another stunner. So let's just, like, a position 2 stunner that's very good. Is probably just like a bounty hunter. That's fine. Oh, not the highwayman, the bounty hunter. That looks like a good comp to try. There's not many other comps like that I really specifically recommend the Flagellant with, because he's just kind of like a filler. He's got like very powerful. Oh, he's also the only character with both a stress heal and a actual heal in the game. So he's kind of like a frontline utility character that can swap in damage at some points. So yeah, you can kind of put whatever characters around him. He would just like to have stunners with him. Okay, as an overall, we've got a very unique character here. The Flagellant is very unique in that it has a bunch of unique things that are different. It's very unique compared to other characters. That's all I want to say. It's got a bunch of stuff that you got to keep track of. He's got a lot of damage in bleeds. He's got a lot of healing in his huge healing skill Redeem. He's got a lot of buffs. He's got a lot of everything. He's got a lot of bleed resist. Just really big numbers all across the board. His health yo-yos. He's very durable. What do I rank this character? I rank him as a low A rank character, and a low A tier character. He's very powerful, fits in a lot of comps. There you go. That's the Flagellant.